So, this time, I want to talk about the relationship of God and the created world. As we've already learned, God is the harmonized, unified body of Songsang and Hyongsang, and both Songsang and Hyongsang have attributes, positivity and negativity. And this is the image of God's existence. So as the original substance, God created this world using the creation principle, which is like a design, in order to create the world. So the created world appears in both image and in symbol. The image, in the created world, the image of God is human beings, and the symbol is all other created things, including animals. So in human beings, we have mind and body, and both our mind and body have positivity and negativity. Same thing amongst all the created beings in the world. There are Songsang and Hyongsang. Without variation, all have Songsang and Hyongsang, and both Songsang has positivity and negativity, and Hyongsang has positivity and negativity. So they're expressed in image and in symbol. So if we take all of the elements within the created world, they include all of the elements that form the human body. So according to the principle of creation, created beings are individual truth bodies developed from God's own nature. So God is in the position of subject, and the created world is in the position of object. God is in the position of the cause, created world is the object. God is internal, created world external. God is the vertical, created world horizontal. God is invisible, incorporeal, created world corporeal. For that reason, we say God is the masculine subject, and created world is the feminine object to God. So created world, who created the world? If God had not created the created world, it would be basically the same thing as a man without a woman. So even if God has Shimjong and love, if there is no object for him to give love to, cannot give and experience love. So before creating his object, before creating the world, God began as that core element that slowly developed through various stages to become the true Father. Which means that God himself had a growing period. And that growing period was the period for perfection of the four realms of heart. And therefore God went forward to create his own perfection, to become the Father, creating himself. And as the Father who had created himself, he needed an object. And that's why the created world was made. And all beings in the created world, apart from human beings, are the symbol of God, but human beings are the image of God. So, internally, the perfection of human beings is the growing period for human beings internally is to grow the Shimjong and character that resembles God. So, how about created beings and human beings? So God, human beings are the concentration or concentrates all the elements within the created world. So human beings have vocal cords that can mimic or reproduce all the sounds of the animals in the created world. You know, a chicken cannot make a sparrow sound, a sparrow cannot make a chicken sound. Horses cannot make a cat sound, cats cannot make a horse sound. But human beings, we have this incredible voice box that allows us to model, and we can make a horse's sound, dog sound, cat sound, sound of a chicken, sound of a sparrow. We can sing, make all sorts of sounds. So it means that the human beings, this one being, with this voice box, has the ability to make all the sounds of all the other living beings. So the elements that the rest of the created world has, there are elements and qualities and materials used starting from various small cells. We have all the elements. We have cells, just as in the created world there are beings that have cells. So there's a difference between human beings and created and other created beings. If we look at let's have a look at the planets. For example, in the case of Earth, we have the 5 great oceans and the 6 great continents, is the way that it's expressed in Korean. But in human beings, we have various internal organs and 6 systems within our body. So we have 5 organs and 6 systems. So this is a concentration or the embodiment of all the different elements in the created world. So why do we have all of these things concentrated within human beings? So that we can play the role of dominion or the role of master over the created world. So God created human beings, therefore God is our master. And God is the Lord over us through true love. But human beings were created to be the master and the rulers over the created world. To do that, we have to obtain the absolute nature, absolute sex. We have to have God's Shimjong through the practice of the principle. So our responsibility as human beings, what do we create? We create our own character through following God's word and practicing God's word and connecting with a human character which is embodied in God's word. It's not a matter of finding knowledge or education in an academic sense that cannot perfect our human character. If we establish that as the standard for character, so everybody in the world, they decide to develop their character based on different philosophies, but they will all won't be united. They'll have different standards. Christians would have a different standard. Atheists would have a different standard. But the only way for all of human beings to have the same standard internally and develop the same unified character is the one being of God, who is the original substance. And a value system would be the same. So even though we may look different externally, internally we are the same because we all come from the same one being. So our motivation is Shimjong and the purpose is joy. So what about the physical body, our human body? We have 12 ribs, which is one on each side, which is 24 ribs. So the ribs have a very important function of protecting the organs that are within our body. So, those internal organs are very sensitive, very important. For this reason, God designed us with the ribs, for example, that protect those organs. If we go around the world, in the rotation of the world, we have the 12 phases of the moon, or which we know as the 12 months. Based on the 12 phases of the moon, we have the moon that is waxing and the moon that is waning. Therefore, there are 24 phases within the 12 phases of the moon. It's based on the phases of the moon that the farmers all around the world can plant and conduct agriculture in the right season based on those the phases of the moon and that calendar. The point is that all of the rules and the order and the structure within the created world are reflected within the human body. If we look at our body, we have hairs on our skin, whether it's on our arms or on our head. And in the physical world, in the planet, there is plants. We have skin, various layers of skin on our body, and the earth has a surface of the earth, the surface layers of the soil. We have muscles within our body, and in the same way, there are subterranean structure within the soil, reflect the muscles within our body. We have the arterial system, or the blood system of arteries and veins. Likewise, within the planet, there is subterranean water channels reflecting that. In this way, God created human beings to reflect His Gyeongsang, but God, based on human beings, on the model of human beings, then God decided the created world. So the created world reflects the Gyeongsang of human beings. So when human beings unite with God, become one with God, then that becomes the way for the physical world to become one with God. So we need to be able to love the entire created world. Why? If we cannot love the entire created world, we cannot even love our own body. Our own body is the representation of the entire created world. So, all of the structures within human beings' body is reflected in the created world. So, all of this comes, the concrete content of the human being and the created world come from the one being, God, who is the original substance. And the core of the original substance is true love. So the created world loves true love. Human beings love love. Animals love true love. Plants love true love. The ocean loves true love. If there's true love, one is the desire to give and give without ceasing. And we want to receive love also. There's no end to how much love we can receive either. So what is it that God wants to possess most of all? It's love. So the highest value in God's universe is love. It's not power, it's not knowledge, it's not material wealth. If they were the standard in our world, that wouldn't work, because you can't. If people were dominated by knowledge or power or material possessions, eventually that dominion would die. They're not eternal. But the human desire to receive continually is love. So a person who gives love from true Shimjeong wants to give and give, and the person who receives true love can receive forever. So forever, this give and receive action can continue. So God established true love as the highest value, so that human beings would value true love more than anything, and also naturally surrender to true love as well. Human beings don't want to be dominated or controlled by others. We don't like it. But the thing that we love the most is true love. And within true love, if somebody dominates us or controls us through true love, that's okay. We love that. Because what's the motivation of true love is for the sake of the other. So when a person is dominated through true love, creates happiness. So if a man gives love to a woman and that love is received, then joy is returned to the man. The more love he gives, the more joy he receives. Therefore, that give and receive action can be eternal. Eternal life, therefore, exists only within the realm or concept of true love. So God's fundamental nature is the root of true love, which is Shimjong. God and human beings, God and the created world, human beings in the created world. All of those contents, the core of all of that, the fundamental core of all of these beings is true love and Shimjong. And Shimjong is the original substance of God, and Shimjong is the motivation to give and receive joy. It doesn't require anybody's command to give. It is an inherent impulse to give, to love, and therefore experience joy. So God, what do you want to have? If you ask God, God will reply, love, true love. How do you want to live? What do you think is a good way to live? If we ask God, what would God say? Oh, I'd like to have a lot of money so I can do anything I want. Oh, I'd like to have a lot of power so I can tell everybody in the world what to do. No. God's desire, God's hope, is to be intoxicated in love. If I'm intoxicated in love, that's the best. For God, that would be happiness. So, same for us. If we become people also who are intoxicated in God's true love, how wonderful will that be? We cannot see true love, but even though we can't see it, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So where does God's true love come from? Shimjong. God's fundamental, essential nature is Shimjong. It doesn't need to be pushed to do anything. Shimjong is an inherent, self-driven impulse to give. So energy, God's energy, God is the original substance of energy. There is energy that emerges within vacuum. So within energy, there is a material energy, and then that material energy moves towards a certain direction and certain purpose, as well as the mind energy. And what is the foundation? Is true love. And the direction is true love. So what about, from the viewpoint of the divine principle, let's look at the I Ching, the Oriental philosophy book, the I Ching, and the Bible. If something is not resolved by that truth, then that truth is not the principle, because the principle is the key and solution to all things. So in the West, the Bible has been the standard to understand things, and in Asia or in the East, the basic philosophy was the I Ching. And within the I Ching, Tae Guk, which is seen as the great ultimate, was the beginning of all things. So God is the original cause. But at least within Oriental philosophy, it's the same idea. That original cause they refer to as the great ultimate, or Taeguk in Korean. And from the great ultimate comes yang and yin. And from yang and yin, they develop into the 5 elements. And the 5 elements, through their interaction, form all the created beings in the world. How about in the case of Christianity or Judeo-Christianity, the Bible sees God as the original cause and the content of God, as it says in the Gospel of John, chapter 1, with God was the Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. And so through the Bible, we understand that the idea is that the Word exists in the beginning, together with God. In other words, God didn't create the Word, but the Word was created by God. God's Word is the concept, is the design. And through that, through the Word, God designed and created the created world. I don't know how much these kinds of things are emphasized in modern theology today, but this is the basic content of the I Ching and the Bible. So, Oriental philosophy, Western philosophy, is there a way that they can come into harmony? How can they become one? Within the ultimate, great ultimate, there is yang and yin in Oriental philosophy. And yang and yin together represent the path. They're called Do, or the way. And that way, in essence, corresponds to the Word of God. So, from this viewpoint, in Western philosophy, we say that with God was the Word, and the Word created all things. And in Oriental philosophy, there is yin-yang, and they develop into the 5 elements, which develop into the entire world. So, yin-yang is the way, and the way is the Word. So, in this sense, we can understand that the Word that the Bible describes and the way which the I Ching describes are actually talking about the same thing. So, the very difference is that in I Ching, the great ultimate is seen in a philosophical sense, but within the Bible, we understand God to be a parent, the God of our Father, and therefore having a personal relationship with human beings. So, with just this content, however, they cannot be the same. So, up until now, they've evolved and developed in different streams without unity between them. So how, from the viewpoint of the principle, can we illuminate and clarify different dimensions of these 2 approaches to understanding the world? How can we understand them through the unification, through the principle of creation? So in the I Ching, the great ultimate does not use the word of Sungsang and Hyungsang. There is no such concept there. All they have is yang and yin. And that yang and yin, what does it correspond to? From the viewpoint of the principle of creation, it corresponds to positivity and negativity within the principle of creation. We understand that the positivity and negativity are attributes of Sungsang and Hyungsang. So in the I Ching, it does not reveal Sungsang and Hyungsang, but it does reveal the positivity and negativity. So, character, the existence of character, is present through Songsang and Hyungsang. Therefore, in Oriental philosophy, they cannot explain the character or personality aspect of existence. So in the Bible understands that God exists, but it doesn't explain that God has a mind and body or Songsang and Hyungsang. Also, we know through the principle that Songsang and Hyungsang both have the attributes of positivity and negativity, and that's not mentioned at all in the Bible. Nonetheless, the Bible does explain that God is our Father and explains that God is a God of personality. And in this sense, it is much further advanced than Oriental philosophy, as expressed in the I Ching. So, Western philosophy, Eastern philosophy understands everything in yang and yin, or positive and negativity, and in the Bible, they don't see in this way. So through the principle of creation, we understand that positivity and negativity are attributes of Songsang and Hyungsang. In the principle, we understand that both men and women, have Songsang and Hyungsang, and that a man has man's Songsang has positivity and negativity, and a man's body has positivity and negativity. But in Oriental philosophy, they understand that a man is positivity or yang, and a woman is negativity or yin. So it's not seen as an attribute, but as a substance. So because they cannot understand the attributes of God and the image of God, for example, there's no way to understand clearly God's will either. And in the Bible, therefore, they just understand God's will. What is God's will? To believe in Jesus. They don't really not able to understand the more detailed nature of God's purpose and providence. So within the principle of creation, we can clarify all of the elements that are not explained in the Oriental I Ching and in the Western Bible. And therefore, within the principle of creation, we have the content which is possible to bring unity between Oriental and West philosophy and find solutions to solve problems in the real world. So what about the theory of original substance in East and West in accordance with the principle of creation? So the Western viewpoint of an original substance is form and essence. And this began with Plato, who was in Greece. Plato defined everything as being comprised of concepts and then the actual substance of that, the material. For example, but Aristotle didn't agree with that, did not actually divided, said they are not divided, but the idea exists within the body. In Plato saw them as being completely separate things, but from Aristotle's viewpoint, the idea exists within the object. So, 진료. Form and substance, yeah. So Aristotle tried to understand how the world is created and came up with the conclusion that it is form and substance, pure form and pure substance. So Aristotle ended up criticizing his teacher Plato as having a dualist philosophy. Material and spirit. And so this particular view that Aristotle put forward evolved and became the idea that in the universe there is spirit and material, but seen as completely separate substances. If God can do everything, the viewpoint that God is omnipotent and can do anything is hard for young people to accept in the modern world. So the particular value system as taught from ancient so taking
So Aristotle's philosophy was more convenient for theology because it explained or attempted to explain how something could come from nothing. But also the root of the problem for a religion today. But it also put more emphasis on the next world. So even though people were existing in the physical world, they had a hope for the spirit world and going to the spirit world. But in the divine principle, you have to become a person of the heavenly kingdom on earth in order to live in the heavenly kingdom in the spirit world. But that was not. That was not supported by the Western philosophy or theology. So what about But in the East, everything was seen as in yin and yang, and the yin and yang there's a spirit and material. So how are they going to be divided? So in Oriental philosophy, they also had many problems with this. So in order to solve this, in the principle, we talk about Songsang and Hyongsang, and so the Aristotle's form and substance, and the spirit and substance, spirit and material. So one is a first substance, and in the first form, the pure form, and that the original that form comes from God, and God has nothing to do with material, they say. So that is why they became dualism, and even the religion in the West became dualistic religion, and even in the life of faith. So the people struggled over this, and they were not able to resolve the problem with this, and so in the principle. So that is why in the principle the Songsang and Hyongsang explanation is very precious and important. It can explain everything. So not only is there Songsang and Hyongsang, but they have this dual characteristics has its own attributes. That is the original positivity and negativity. Each of the dual characteristics has these attributes of positivity and negativity. And why is that? In order to have balance and harmony, and so that gives joy and beauty. So if in God there was no positivity and negativity, what would happen? So there was only a Songsang Hyongsang, what would happen? Then there would be no balance or beauty, no balance and harmony. And then let's see, and important things that also, because this is the case with God, also human beings, men also have aspects of positive and negative, and women also have aspects of positive and negative. So that also gives us a balance and harmony. And so when a man looks at a woman, he can feel joy and happiness, and when a woman looks at a man, she can feel joy and happiness. And so we can see beauty. So men have breasts too, just like women. But for women, when she gives birth, the breasts grow larger. But the man, in the case of the man, it does not. So already, that is the way that God designed it, to change that, to change genders, for a woman wants to become a man, and so she changes. She has a masculine hairstyle and changes clothes, and a man wants to become a woman, and so he dresses like a woman. I went someplace at one time, and there was a woman. It's a beautiful woman, and she wore her clothing like a woman too. But I looked very closely. But I could see that this woman had been shaving, and so I wondered, is that really a woman or a man? And I look at the legs, and they were very hairy, and also the arms were hairy. So, this is a man, and they had breasts, and then look, maybe this is a woman. But is that a woman? That's still a man, just trying to pretend to be a woman. So now the society has become so that we can't tell the difference between men and women. This is an incredible thing. I went to one country in Asia to do this education. I forget where it was, and after the leader took me to the beach. He says, "Let's go on a tour of the beach." So I went to the beach, and it was a city, a tourist city, and there was a sign, and it says, "We will do a gender operation, or we'll change gender change operation." So if a man wants to become a woman, he can go in there and have that kind of operation. And the leader was explaining this to me. This is incredible. So in today's world, we can't tell the difference between truth and falsehood. That's where we've come. But the principle is accurate. Is the values are very certain, are clear, and so this. So now the principle resolves the issues that both the West and East were struggling over. So it gives that, and it gives us content that can create a unity and happiness. So this was not in the divine principle, but it was in the unification thought. But they did not do this fundamentally because the time was not yet right. So they could not say that the original substance had a sexual organ, for example. If it had been written like that back then, it would have been a huge problem. My father, one time, I already told this story, but he created the PWPA, Professors World Peace Academy, and he started talking about convex and concave. And then in the beginning, they thought it strange first, but then they realized this is the truth among truths. And then he went to South America and to Uruguay and built a big hotel, and and we had a meeting there, a rally there in the hotel that was being still not quite finished. But anyways, the completion ceremony, and a lot of important people from Uruguay, 1,200 people gathered there there's a hotel in Uruguay. Politicians were there too. So he stood on the lectern, and he shed a lot of sweat. His clothes became completely soaked, and sweat was falling off. It was dripping. He was dripping with sweat. And his necktie as well. Necktie was dripping his sweat. So that is how much passion he put in. That he talked about convex and concave, and the people were very surprised. But Father didn't care. He just was speaking to them passionately, and he said he asked one person, "Are you a man?" And everyone laughed. He was a man, of course, but Father was asking, "Are you a man?" And he said, "Yes, I am." Then what do you have? What do you have hanging there? A convex or concave? He said. What do you have between your legs? So that was that. Well, who were you created to resemble? Then Father must. He says, then the God must also have a convex. This is the first time he's seen him, but yes. And he went over to a woman. He said, "Are you a woman?" And she said, "Yes." Everyone laughed again, and so then, "Yes, I'm a woman." He said, and then, "What do you have between your legs? Do you have a convex or concave?" And everyone laughed again. Well, women were created in the image of God, so would God also have a concave or not? So, and then he went back up onto the stage. So, and in the very back, about there was a man who was about maybe 2 meters 90 centimeters, 2 meters 90, about 7 or 8 feet tall. As he was standing in the back there, and Father, he was walking towards Father, and Father yelled at him. Everyone's surprised because he yelled. Father said, "I'm the master of this time. I'm the owner of this time." And so he tried to interrupt the meeting, and Father yelled at him. And so he was coming to the front to argue with Father, and after he finished, I asked Father, "So what were you going to do if he came all the way to the front and started arguing with you?" Do you know what Father said? I have to grab him by the clothing and convince him. So that was his determination. And I asked him again, "Father, listening to you today, I understood today that God's ideal of creation was a convex concave. So you should have put that in the principle of creation. That's the fundamental thing. Do you know what he said? If I had put that in the principle of creation, I would no longer be on this earth. Even without that, Father said that he was a sexual religion, and that he was committing adultery, and even had to go to prison, even without that. So if he had written that in the principle, that would have been evidence to that. And so it was very important, but the time was not right, and so he could not put it in the principle. So but the original substance of divine principle teaches that. Do you understand? So because of God is because then we're now talking about the original substance. So we talk about convex, concave, and we talk about the sperm, because that is the lineage. So it is through this OSDP that Western culture and Oriental culture can become one. It is just an outline, but in the future, I'm sure that specialists will add a lot of flesh to this outline. But the two cannot be separated. We have think this way, but the OSDP says this. So why was this explained this way? So which is correct? Well, this OSDP must be right, and then they have to understand where they were lacking, and where their explanations were wrong. So, and I'm sure that era will come where they will recognize that the OSDP is the standard for all their scholarship in all areas. But without that standard and a basic principle, there will be confusion. So I think But if human beings were to establish it, it would change. But if God establishes it, it does not, never changes. That is why it is called the original substance of the principle. Now, universal prime force, give and receive action, and for position foundation. So how did, we're talking now, how did God create? So, universal prime force, give and receive, and for position foundation. As we know, the universal prime force was the fundamental force by which God created, and it is, everything needs an energy in order to exist, and the fundamental of that energy is a universal prime force. It is the everything that God created must have energy in order to exist, and the root of that is the universal prime force. And then all existences must have energy. So then God also needs energy to exist, and He must have energy. He must create. He must put out energy in order to create. The energy is an attribute, and in order to have the creation exist, God must have put forth energy, and there must be a causal energy then. That causal energy is the universal prime force, and so he has his own energy, and beings themselves cannot transmit, cannot radiate energy. So the universal prime force has two meanings. It is the energy that allows God to exist, and also it is also the causal energy that produces the energy by which a creation can exist. So then, give and receive action. In our principle, we talk about subject and object partners having a reciprocal base, and then having give and receive action. So then these in the original substance, the Songsang and Hyongsang have a give and receive. They establish a reciprocal position by means of the universal prime force, and they through that energy they're able to exist, multiply, and function. That is by universal prime force. So in our principle, God has a Songsang and Hyongsang aspects or parts, and the Songsang, as the essence of that is Shimjong, and the Hyongsang, the essence of that is a universal prime force. But so in our divine principle, it says that there is a give and take action by means of a universal prime force, and by everything is able to exist, multiply, and function as a result of that. So when a Hyongsang, part of God, has the give and receive action with a Songsang, then that itself has the energy that comes as a result of that. And what is the difference then between the universal prime force and the energy that comes from the give and receive action? The universal prime force is the cause, the subject position, and the internal, whereas the energy that comes from the give and receive action is the result. It is in the object position, and it is external. So that is the relationship between these two types of energy. And the most important question in philosophy is existence and relationship. And so here, these are two types of energies exist. That explain that, and is that there is a give and receive action within God by the universal prime force, and then there is by that give and receive action, there's energy that comes out. So then the relationship of a Songsang, Hyongsang, and a give and receive action, because these are aspects within God, who is the original substance. So this is also an issue that we must look at. So in the original substance of our divine principle, we say that Songsang and Hyongsang have a reciprocal relationship, and they establish a reciprocal standard. And then now reciprocal relationship and reciprocal standard are different. And then there is a phenomenon of receive and of give and receive, and that is the give and receive action. So then, when they exist, they have a reciprocal base. So let's talk about here. So here, so to say that they have a reciprocal relationship means that they face each other. If they have their backs to each other, there's no give and receive action. So they have to face each other. So there's a man and woman, and the man is looking east and the woman looking west. Then what's going to happen? There's no reciprocal relationship. So to say that they have a reciprocal relationship means that they are they're facing each other, and they're going to give and receive. So what happens when they give and receive? Then they have a reciprocal standard. So in other words, they face each other, and there is a standard by which they can give and receive. And then what do they give and receive? There is a certain purpose. A purpose that has to be common. Songsang and Hyongsang both must have a common purpose. So then the reciprocal relation is that they face each other, and to say that they have a reciprocal standard means that they have a common purpose. And so then when they have give and receive, then they establish a reciprocal base. So here, this center is a universal prime force, and then God, who is the original substance, then he has a dual characteristics, attributes of a Songsang Hyongsang on the left and right, and then Hyongsang is a universal prime force, and we say that by universal prime force, the Songsang and Hyongsang are able to have a reciprocal relation, and then they have a give and receive. So our explanation here is different from the divine principle. Songsang is central. Songsang is a Shimjeong. So centering on Shimjeong, there is a common purpose. So first they face each other with a reciprocal relationship, and then they must have a common purpose by which centering on which they can have a give and receive relationship. Then they have a give and receive relationship centering on Shimjeong, and then once they do that, then there is a result, and that is the union of the two. And so there's the purpose is the center, and they have a give and receive, and then there's a new existence, a new life form. So then the union is talking. The union is talking about something within God's original substance, but then it creates a new life form. And so here, what we need to know here is that Shimjeong is the center. So why is it? Because there's a reciprocal standard. And they are seeking a common purpose, and that common purpose is Shimjeong. So that's why it is at the center. And if they have give and receive based on that, then they have a give and receive action. And when that action takes place, there's always a result. There's always a result. There must be a center to give and receive action, and when they have that, there must be a result. So this is give and receive action. And so if there's no center, no result, Songsang and Hyongsang this is not give and receive. This is just two. This is simply two existences, giving and receiving, but it's not give and receive action. Do you understand? So the divine principle does not explain this. Of course, that is implied in there, but we don't really understand this. That if there's no purpose and no result, then it's just two beings giving and receiving. So there must always be a center, and if there is a give and receive, there has to be a result. So Shimjung must always be at the center, and there always must be a result for it to be give and receive action. And then these four compose the four position foundation. So if there's no center and no result, and that's just Songsang and Hyongsang, just giving and receiving. It's not give and receive action. They are just giving impulses to the other. That's all, not give and receive. So for it to be give and receive action, there must be a center, and there must be a union of the two then. So the Songsang, Hyongsang, and result, and with the center. So there are four beings here, four existences. So this is the four-position foundation. So then there are two prerequisites for there to be give and receive actions. Two prerequisites. First, before they do give and receive action, there must be a center that is established, a center. And then the second condition is that there must always be a result of the give and receive action. So the center, the Songsang and Hyongsang, here the center, the Songsang, Hyongsang, and the result, these are the four existences. So, but if there's no center and no result, they're simply acting on each other, simply giving impulses to each other, and that's all. But so we need to know the difference with those two situations. Now the center can be either Shimjung or purpose. And if a Shimjung is the center, then there will be a union. But if the purpose is the center, then that the creation is the result, and then the result will be a multiplied body or a new life form when the purpose is the center. So then son and daughter may be created, or other created beings can come from that action. Do you understand? So now we look at here. When Shimjung is the center, then the result is a union, and the union can be a harmonized body. But when the purpose is the center, then this can be either a multiplied body or a new life form. That's the thing. So if when there's no center or result, then this is not a give and receive action. It is simply two beings acting on each other. So when there is a give and receive, there is a certain characteristic. So whenever there is give and receive action, there is a spherical. It becomes spherical. So they establish a balance and harmony. So then this is the characteristic of a give and receive action. So it becomes a circle, and it has first a circle, and then that acts, and it becomes a circular being. So that is why it becomes a circle, and that is eternal. But not between 2 points. 2 points can only form a line, but there has to be one more point. And centering on that third point, they go round and round, and they can become a circle, and then they can reproduce a result. This is the content on the give and receive action. So then, all beings are relational beings. All existences all beings are relational beings. So That means they respond to one another. Why is that? God, who is the original substance of the principle, are relational beings, and also positivity and negativity are relational to each other. Why is that? So, in order to have they are that way so that they can have give and receive action. Why do they have to do that? In order to develop. So if there is no give and receive, then there is no development. So what do they give and receive with? Love and beauty. This is what they give and receive. When they give and receive with the love and beauty, there's a joy and there's happiness. And so that is why all beings are relational. And all of God's attributes are also relational. So why do I say this? Because among some young people today, they don't see things as being in relational. Then they explain everything. They say man and woman are relational, and then father and mother are relational, and they say everything is relational. They say, and then when they go to the end, they say that good and evil is also relational. They say in the end. So but are they relational, or are they contradictory, oppositional? Because they are different. So in the Satanic world, the purpose in the Satanic world, they say that good and evil must meet, but absolutely not. They just but communism says that they are relational, but they explain everything is relational. At the end, they say the good and evil are also relational. But you have to listen very carefully, so that in the motivation and purpose are you have to look at it. But when Father goes into his room, and then so I see the example of the sentence that I gave before. If you just have one slight difference in the spelling, then it can completely different meaning. For example, the sentence in the Korean that says the father goes into his room, if you just change one syllable in that sentence, move it slightly to the right, it becomes father goes into the bag. And then people are often fooled by this. This is the strategy of communism. They just change a little bit, and so it make it sounds truthful, but it's false. And so everything is relational, and it responds to each other. So here, in today's world, human beings are all in a subject-object relationship. There's a subject is parents and object, and a husband and a wife, and teacher and a disciple, and the employer and employee, also subject-object, and the government and citizens are subject and object. This we have to think about this a little bit. The government is the subject, and citizens are in the object. But in democracy, we see that the sovereignty is in the citizens. So the citizens are the subject, so why is the government in the subject position then? That is not because they give orders, but because that is the expansion of the family form. So because the president is the father of the country, just like there is a father in the family, and so he sacrifices everything for the sake of the children so that they can be happy, and so also the president is the expansion because he's in the father position for the nation, so he must sacrifice himself so that all the people in the nation can be happy. So you cannot have a situation where some people are eating well and others not, and some people have money and the others not. The president does not have the qualification to be president. And so the president, even if he starves, he has to feed the citizens, and he has to make sure that all the children of his country are able to receive education, and he must let that is the heart of the true parent. But no leader in the world, though, does that today. In fact, they take public money, in fact, and use it for their own family and for their own children. This is what people are doing. Leaders are doing today, and so so that's why the citizens complain. But for the government to be in the subject position, the president and the government must be they act as the parent. They must protect the citizens. And then there are the secretaries of the various departments. What do they do? They are like the siblings, the older brothers and sisters. But then they steal everything. And how are our younger siblings supposed to live? Just like in the family, the older siblings must live for the sake of the younger siblings. So the same is true in the government, in the country. And so that's why we say that the government is in the subject position. So in the animals kingdom, the males are in the object position, and in the also in the plant kingdom, there is a subject and object, and also in the elements, positive and negative. So there is a positive and negative subject and object relationship between them, because these are all created to resemble God, and so this itself. So because these are different, so they are not oppositional, and they all give and receive. So
let's have a look at the example of a flower, for example. You have the butterflies and the flowers working together. Butterfly is an animal. Flower is a plant. So the give and receive action happens between the animals and the plants in the form that the butterfly brings things to the flower, and the flower provides food for the butterfly. Which one's more important between the veins and the arteries? They're both very critical. So the blood brings the nutrients to the veins. Sorry, the arteries bring the nutrients in the blood to the various parts of the body, and then returns to the heart with various elements that need to be removed. Give and receive action. Of course, if the give and receive relationship between these these different systems, that person will experience disease and become unwell. So there's a give and receive action. What about the sun? Right, the sun exists, and there are some 8 planets rotating around the sun. We have Mars, we have the Earth, we have the Moon, but all of these have an extremely accurate orbit that does not change. It is not a random rotation or circulation, but is well defined. How did that? How incredible must the being that designed this system be? As they rotate, as the planets rotate around the sun, each in their own orbit, they don't vary. They don't leave that orbit. It's extremely accurate. Amongst all the planets, we have the Earth, And if the Earth travels around the sun once, that's a year. If it stopped, then that would be a problem. So it goes on unchangingly. So the moon rotates or orbits the Earth, and the Earth orbits the sun. So if we look in some machinery, you have gears, and the gears are all interacting together. Consider when the moon rotates around the Earth once a month. Women's menstrual cycle is also the same. It's 1 year, 1 month, the same as the rotation of the moon. What if the moon decided, I am going to be the Earth. I'm going to be in the Earth position. That would destroy everything. So there's an order there, and there is a law there. And that's the principle. It's the principal design of God's creation. So everything from individual, from human beings to animals, plants, materials, everything is relational and exists through give and receive action. What about in the Bible? What did Jesus say? In Matthew chapter 7, verse 2, those who judge will be judged. If you don't want to be judged, don't judge others. For the judgment that you give will be the judgment that you receive. If I go to somebody else and I judge them and criticize them in that way, that will come back to me. Do you want to receive something? In that case, then give first. But if you don't give anything, but you just want to receive, you can wait and wait, but nothing will come. When you give first, and then something will return. But you don't give with this idea that something's going to come back to me. You give with the heart to give. So when you give, then give and give and give without expecting that return, and then eventually that return will be automatic. It will happen naturally through the principle. So if you don't want to be criticized, or you don't want to be persecuted by others, do not persecute others. If you want to receive, give first. Unto all people, if you testify to all people that I am God's Son, I will testify to my Father about you. If you go and testify to other people that I am the Messiah, that Jesus is the Messiah, then when Jesus to his Father will testify to you. But if you testify lies, if you tell lies to others, that will be what you receive. So let's look at the viewpoint of the conscience from the viewpoint of give and receive action. So the conscience has a power of its own. So the power of the conscience occurs or is derived from give and receive action. All people have the conscience and is designed to and brings all people in the direction of goodness. So the original nature of the conscience, the subject of the conscience is God. So the conscience always tries to push away the evil mind and lead us in the direction of the original mind. So what is the action of the conscience within original human beings? The original mind is dominated by God and has given-receive action directly with God. However, the conscience has given-receive action with the standard of truth which comes from God. So the power of the conscience leads us to goodness through a given-receive action with goodness, through a given-receive action with truth. Problem is, if in the fallen world so the conscience leads us always not to do evil. But the original mind has direct give and take with God. So the conscience, through the conscience, we become one with God's truth, and that is how we develop and perfect our original mind. So when we die, our physical body dies, but our conscience continues to exist on within our spirit. What about in the case of fallen human beings? The conscience must become one with God through truth. But the problem is that our understanding of truth in the fallen world is limited. There's a little bit of truth in there, but it's not entirely the truth. Therefore, the give and receive action is that the power of the conscience, therefore, diverts at an angle because we are not completely able to understand truth. So for fallen human beings, the power of the conscience needs to be aligned with God's truth in order to develop our original mind. So give and receive action, from the viewpoint of give and receive action, let's look at the fall and look at salvation. So fallen human beings created a give and receive action with Satan, and fallen human beings cannot be directly relate with God because of the fall. Therefore, human beings need to cut off the relationship with Satan and have give and receive action with the Messiah who comes from God, represents God. Cut off from Satan, become God's child through give and receive action with the Messiah, separating from Satan. That's why we say that the Messiah is the mediator between God and man. As Jesus said in the Gospel of John, chapter 14, I am the way, the truth, and the life. So, the Messiah is the one who teaches the way of life to connect to God, teaches the truth of God, and is the path to life. And in fact, it should have said, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and love, because the Messiah must fulfill that role. But Jesus could not receive the love of the chosen people because they did not believe in Jesus, did not respond to Jesus. Jesus was unable to experience love with his brothers and sisters, love with his parents, or love of the people. But in Father's case, Father because Jesus died on the cross, then all the disciples need to follow the same way of Jesus and experience that course. Okay, let's look at number 7, the view of the original mind and the relationship between the original mind and the conscience from the viewpoint of give and receive action. So the original mind has give and receive action with God. God is the subject, and the original mind is the object. Because God and the original mind are one, The original mind is the subject and the body is the object. What about the conscience? Conscience relates to God through truth. So conscience that becomes one with the truth and thereby connects to God. So when the conscience becomes one with truth, the conscience precedes the parents, even precedes the teacher, even goes before God. It speaks to us more quickly, more closer to us than God. The problem is that if the standard of truth varies or is misaligned, then the work of the conscience also becomes misaligned. So you shouldn't really like people who have spiritual medium. Spiritual communication with the spiritual world is not essential. We need to understand the principle as the standard for our life. So, if my conscience is suffering, it means that I'm going a false path. And when the conscience understands that the way that I'm going is not the way that God wants, it causes pain within us. And the conscience is the teacher for us, that teaches us the standard of how to go before God. And if we deviate from that standard, my conscience experiences pain. But the problem is with fallen human beings is that we suppress the feelings of the conscience. Even if we do it, we sin, and then we feel the pain from our conscience, and our conscience calls us, but we do it again and again and again until eventually we can't even feel it anymore. Therefore, if we commit a small sin or any kind of sin and then we experience pain, then we need to repent straight away and return back to the standard. So we looked at the relationship between original mind and conscience through give and receive action. So the four-position foundation. How is the four-position foundation created? Through the interaction of universal prime force, give and receive action. So by creating a reciprocal standard, they accomplish give and receive action, centering on with the same center. So there is invariably a center, there is a give and receive action, and then there is a result. So the four-position foundation acts centered on the center, and Songsang and Hyongsang have give and receive action to create the result. In this way, four different positions are established, creating a spatial dimension through the give and receive of these four different positions. So that's the four-position foundation. Centering on the center, Songsang and Hyongsang have give and receive action to create the result, and manifesting in a spatial dimension. If we think of a four-position foundation from origin, division, union, that is a sequential understanding, not a spatial understanding. It's a sequential relationship that we're talking about. So the four-position foundation, Chongbunhab. So yeah, ODU. So origin, division, union, action is a sequential relationship of time through time. But the four-position foundation, center, Songsang, Hyongsang, and the result is a spatial relationship. First of all, there needs to be a center. There must give and receive reaction, and then there is a result. needs these elements. If there is no center and there is no result, then they are just having reciprocal action. Not give and receive action, reciprocal action. So, depending on the purpose, the give and receive action sent on the one center and creating a result, there needs to be these 4 elements for it to be qualified as give and receive action. And if we look at it from in terms of time, a sequential flow of time, origin, division, union. So origin, division, union is the give and receive action happens. And therefore the relationships are expressed in a sequential dimension or time dimension. But in the 4-position foundation where the 4 positions are established, that's a spatial dimension, expressed in a spatial sense. So we need to think of these kind of rather elevated concepts, but they're important. So give and receive action takes place centering on what? Centering on universal prime force. But if that center is Shimjeong, centering on the Shimjeong, give and receive action creates a result, and that result is center, give and receive action, result. There's 4 beings or 4 existences. Is a spatial relationship, but a sequential or time relationship is origin, division, union, action. They are referring to the same thing in 2 different dimensions. All right, we'll finish this session here. Take a break. Until 5 o'clock, right? Yeah. Okay. Okay, no, not 5:30. Okay, we'll start from 6 o'clock after dinner. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let us pray.